safety briefing. Under everyone's seats, bright orange life jackets can be found. Leave them under there, don't take them out unless instructed to do so by myself and the captain. In the unlikely event of an emergency, we'll ask you to take these out from under your seats. When we ask you to put them on, simply slide your head through either side as they are reversible. First set of straps, tie nice and tight under your chin. The longer straps, they drop down, wrap them behind your back, and tie them off in front of you. We shouldn't have any kids, so we don't need any kids' life jackets on this cruise. But emergency exits, next item on the list, we have the door on the back deck that we all entered through. Any of these sliding windows can also double as emergency exits. And lastly, opening this little hatch allows us to exit via the bow of the boat. Finally, on the stern of the vessel is the life raft in a white bill-looking container. It has a capacity of 45 grown adults. Capacity of this boat, 45. So even if we were a full boat, you wouldn't need to push your husband or wife into the water. Everyone is guaranteed a spot on that life raft. And the way we can deploy it, simply knocking that capsule into the water, giving it a tug on a cord, it'll self-inflate, we'll load everyone and the beer up, and we'll paddle our way to safety. Sound good? Perfect. Now that the safety briefing is out of the way, that back deck will be open for the entire duration of the cruise. Just a couple of rules, maximum of 8 people out there at any given time, just for the stability of the boat. And just to try and keep that door closed to the best of our ability. That keeps the diesel fumes on the outside of the cabin, otherwise they kind of get sucked in here, makes for a little bit of a smelly ride. Just those 2 rules, otherwise utilize that back deck space at any point throughout the cruise. Now, how this cruise is going to work, we have a caddy of 4 beers that is to be shared amongst 2 people, and there is a specific order that we like to go through the beers just for tasting and palate reasons. I can't control you though, I can't stop you from shotgunning all 4 as soon as I give you the caddy, but there is a specific order, kind of a reason why we go through that order, so we encourage you to follow along, and we like to be a little quirky. We like to try and open all of the beer cans at the same time. Usually gets better as the beers go on. But before I hand out the beers, we'll get some housekeeping items out of the way. Right here, just general recyclables, just the beer cans in this big bin, please. I'll come around and collect after every beer. The other housekeeping item, my least favorite thing to introduce, the bucket of shame. So, not all of us like the same kind of beers. If you don't like one of the kinds of beers, you can dump it out in this bucket. If you really don't like it and it comes up, this bucket can also be used as well. But I won't judge you for dumping out a beer. I can't control everybody else judging you for dumping out a perfectly good beer. But are we ready to get underway with the beer?
Yeah.
Perfect. So, there's caddy 4 beers for 2 people.
Thank you.
And I'll come right around with the cups.
Thank you.
So everybody's got beer, everybody's got cups. Perfect. The first beer that we like to get into, the Best of Kin Fire Bloom Honey Mead Lager. So I'll count us down. Off to a great start. We'll count us down and we'll all try to crack it at the same time. That's all right. And we'll go in. Everybody ready? On the count of 3. In 1, 2, 3. Not bad. We'll give it a 5 out of 10. We can do a little bit better. Next beer, we'll go for a 7 out of 10. But this beer, brought to you by Best of Kin, a brewery from just in Calgary. This beer, we really like it here at Lake Minnewanka. We have had some forest fires pass through here throughout the last 40 years or so. And this beer, made from the honey from the fireweed, one of the first succession plants to pop up after a wildfire has passed through the area. All Western Canada ingredients in this beer. Very nice. We have partnered with a lot of breweries this year that give back, have a sense of community. So for every can that's Best of Kin sells of this beer, they donate a certain amount of proceeds to the Alberta wildfire prevention. So pretty nice that we have a beer that can give back to the community, especially the community around the lake, because we have actually had forest fires here. In the 1980s we had two, and in the early 2000s we had another forest fire. All three of these burns, not wildfires, but prescribed burns, controlled burns conducted by Parks Canada. Now take a wild guess as to which shoreline the fires occurred on here at Lake Minnewanka. Is it over here in this beautiful green, full, dense forest? Or is it over on the north shore, the very patchy looking forest over there? Wild guess. What do we think? The patchy one. Yep. So the forest over here on our south shore has not seen a forest fire in upwards of 180 years, causing it to become a little overgrown. As you can see on the forest floor, almost no light able to penetrate down through and hit that forest floor, and that makes it so no other smaller plants are able to grow on that forest floor. Alternatively, looking at the north shore, you can see a lot more biodiversity, a lot more colors, especially this time of the year, with some of those aspen trees and shrubs changing colors to that yellow. But Parks Canada in the 1980s did not know a whole lot about how to light a forest fire safely. They decided the best time of year to light a forest fire was a hot, dry, windy, clear sky July day. They intended only to burn about 1 square kilometer of trees back by our docks. Where we're going to be stopping the boat at our halfway turnaround point, you can still see residual fire damage all the way 20 kilometers down the lake. Obviously, a little out of control, so from that fire forward, Parks abandoned the term controlled burn and opted for the more fitting prescribed burn, because we can get a prescription wrong every now and then. But that forest fire has done a lot of good for our North Shore, a lot more biodiverse, a lot more food for the animals here. We have, most of the animals actually prefer to frequent our North Shore due to that increased amount of food. Well, there will still sometimes be animals traveling through the South Shore, no hiking trail, no human impact on that side. So it's a great corridor to go if you want to avoid the humans, because we do have our North Shore's hiking trail over there. But that'll just about do it for me. I'll hop off the mic, we'll throw on some tunes, and I'll introduce that next beer in about 10-15 minutes. Sounds good? Perfect. And if you do have any questions as the music is playing, feel free to flag me down. I'll happily come around and answer. But until then, enjoy the next beer for about 10-15 minutes here. Backstory. The Four Dogs Salted Lime Lager. So that green and white can in there, Four Dogs Brewing, another Calgary brewery. And this one holds a special place in my heart. The owner, Vince, started this brewery with naming it after his 4 dogs that he rescued, all special needs dogs that he rescued, fostered, and cared for until they passed. So 4 dogs named after the 4 dogs he rescued in succession. Each one of his core beers. So what do we got here? Elvis, named after one of those 4 rescue dogs. The dog's name, Elvis. And it was a rescue dog he rescued down in Mexico. But, we ready to crack that open? Count of 3. Alrighty. So we'll go in 1, 2, 3. There we go, a little bit better. Perfect. So, I will still tell a lake story to go along with the 4 Dogs Brewery, but I do like to give a brief overview of Vince's brewery since it has such a special place in my heart, big softie for dogs. So he does have a dog-friendly brewery downtown Calgary, and we had Vince on one of the boats last year to do a little spiel, break down the brewery, the story behind it, and the story behind Elvis, a rescue dog from Mexico that when Vince rescued him, he noticed Elvis had a little bit of a swing in the hips like the king once did. So he thought it would only be right to name him after the king for that famous swing in the hips. And Elvis, because he was rescued in Mexico, Vince thought the beer to dedicate to Elvis was a Mexican-style lager. Now Vince wanted to use real limes in this beer, which he did, but it took a little bit of trial and error. Because what he found was when he used real lime, to get that lime flavor to really pop in the beer, it turned it into an American beer. It wasn't strong enough. Vince wanted at least 5%, 4.5% for his beer. He wanted a Canadian beer. So what he found was if you put a little bit of salt in that beer, drew out the lime flavor a little bit better, didn't drop the alcohol percentage quite as much. So that's why there's that salt in there as well. Killed 2 birds with 1 stone. His wife, a huge fan of margaritas. This beer worked out great for his wife and everybody else. But the story to tell about the lake, we'll just go over some of the frequently asked questions here at Lake Minnewanka. Size of the lake, depth of the lake, name of the lake. Well, the size, we are traveling on Banff National Park's largest lake, as well as the deepest lake in the national park. From one shoreline to the other, our width only about 1 kilometer, half mile wide on average. The length varies greatly throughout the year. If you were to be traveling here in May, only about 22 kilometers, 13-14 miles long. As the summer progresses, all of the snow melts off the surrounding mountains, fills our lake up by about 10 meters, 30 feet, extending the length to be about 28 kilometers long by summer's end, which is in the neighborhood of about 18-19 miles long. Now, the measurement that some people really dislike, the depth. If you don't want to know how deep we are, now's your chance to plug your ears. But the average depth of our lake, 60 to 70 meters, 230 feet. The deepest point, 142 meters, just under 500 feet deep. Did anybody happen to pass through Calgary on their travels to Banff? A couple of us, perfect. You happen to notice the Calgary Tower? Looks like a rip-off of the CN Tower. If you were to put that Calgary Tower in the deepest point of our lake, only the antenna and a little bit of the building would protrude out of the water. If that's not a good visual indication, we do have a Subway in Banff. They sell those foot-long sandwiches, buy about 500 of them, line them up down Banff Avenue. That's how deep our lake is. As for the final measurement of the water, temperature. Did anybody, before getting on the boat, have a chance to stick their fingers in the water? No? Well, I highly encourage you to do so. The water after the beer cruise might feel a little bit warmer, but it's still going to be very, very cold. Out here in the middle of the lake, underneath that first meter, 3 feet of water, 2 to 4 degrees Celsius all year round. For our American friends in Fahrenheit, that would be very cold. 36 to 40 degrees Fahrenheit. Not exactly swimming water. Back by the docking area, it might be a little bit warmer than here in the middle of the lake, but at an average temperature 2 to 4 degrees Celsius all year round. And another frequently asked question, name of the lake. What does it mean? Minnewanka. Does anybody know what that means? Oh, so close. Another S word. There you go. Lake of the Spirits, spirited waters. Where that comes from? Minnewanka, from the Sioux language family. Spoken up here by the Stoney Nakota. Down in the US you have the Lakota and Dakota. That's why Minnesota, Minnewanka sound so similar. They both stem from that same language. Minnewanka, Minne, translating to water. Wanka, spirits or spirited. So that's where you get the spirited waters from. Minnesota's state slogan, land of 10,000 lakes. They didn't just get that anywhere. They used the translation of Minnesota into English, played on the words a little bit. Minne, again, water. Soda, a few different meanings. Sky tinted is one of them, another one being many. many waters, land of 10,000 lakes. Minnesota is also known as the land of sky-tinted waters. Minnesota translating directly into sky-tinted waters. So, pretty neat, the Sioux language. I feel like all of us have heard it quite a few times. Anyone seen the movie Dances with Wolves? Yeah. So that movie, that is the language spoken by the indigenous, the Sioux language family. And one final little fun fact about Lake Minnewanka. This lake does freeze in the winter, completely, one end to the other. Ice will get to be about 3 feet, 1 meter thick at its thickest point. And I like to bring up this because I'm about to leave everybody on a little bit of a cliffhanger. What do we wager is the most popular wintertime activity at Lake Minnewanka?
Ice fishing.
Ice fishing? That would be the case if it wasn't outside of our fishing season. Fishing season just ended on Labor Day, will not commence again until Victoria Day, Memorial Day for our American friends next May. So, not ice fishing, what else do we wager? Ice skating? Ice skating's a good bet, not quite number one though. Cross-country skiing? Yeah, that would be a good guess. Not snowmobiling, unfortunately not allowed in the national park. Hockey, pretty good guess as we are in the mountains in Canada, but no. The most popular wintertime activity, scuba diving. What? Yeah, scuba diving, the most popular wintertime activity here at Lake Minnewanka. Now that's the cliffhanger. What are they scuba diving down to go see? Why do they like to do it in the winter? That'll be my next story. I'll let you sit and marinate with that for a little bit while you're drinking that beer. I'll pop off the mic, throw the music back on. I'll be back on the mic when we're at our turnaround point. But just think, what the heck would someone be scuba diving in the mountains when it's negative 40 degrees winter days outside? But I'll throw the music back on, enjoy that beer, and I'll pop back on at our halfway point. Destination just in front of us. This is where the mountains meet the prairies, also known as the Devil's Gap. Why is it called the Devil's Gap? Well, we discussed these waters called the spirited waters. To the Stoney, the group that named this lake, spirits to them energy and forces in nature. Because of this gap, we have a lot of winds that come through the prairies, kicking up our waters, churning them up quite a bit. In fact, one of our captains, he has seen a wave as high as 7 feet high here on Lake Minnewanka, simply due to because of the winds pouring in from that valley. But the Europeans of the time, they heard the Stoney warning of evil spirits. To the Europeans, evil spirits meant one thing and one thing only, the devil. So they named this lake Devil's Lake. They also named that gap Devil's Gap. Now there also was rumors of a lake monster being here, but someone eventually caught that lake monster and was able to get the lake's name changed back to Minnewanka from Devil's Lake. There was no monster in the gap, so the gap kept its name all these years after. Now there is a lake monster here. It was a legend that the Stoney had of a half-man, half-fish creature pulling Stoney children down under the water to the bottom of the lake, never to be seen again. Now this legend probably factored into the Devil's Lake name, but one man, Norman Luxton, he didn't like that because he was running boat cruises on a lake called Devil's Lake with a supposed lake monster lurking deep beneath. Something needed to change. So Norman put out an article in the townspaper that explained to the people of Banff he would travel up to Devil's Lake for 1 week to not only find but also to capture and kill the lake monster. He asked the residents of Banff if he was not back by the end of the week that a search party could be sent out for his remains. Now obviously he came back. We've got a photo of the lake monster here. He came back exactly at the end of the week, kept the monster that he had caught in a cage on the docks covered in a blanket. Once he had a large crowd of people gathered around, he would ask them all, "You want to see the lake monster?" "Yeah, 5 cents. Charge everybody 5 cents in order to see it." After he'd collected everyone's money, quickly lifting the blanket up and dropping it back down, similar to this. He'd say, "Oh, you didn't get a good look? Well, I'll need another 5 cents. And he would do that exactly again. People began to get annoyed. Norman would say, "Don't go anywhere, folks. I'm putting the monster on a boat, going out to where I caught him. You can join me, only 25 more cents. People were now happy to pay that price. The monster had been caught. And this was the monster that Norman told he told everyone he pulled out of the lake. He did technically pull it out of the lake. That's not where the monster originally came from, though. His daughter Eleanor, after Norman passed in the 1960s, went through his study, found a very old receipt dated back to the same year Norman caught the monster, 1911. The company's name, from Yokohama, Japan, a taxidermy company called Create Your Own Monster. So Norman had found a Build-A-Bear workshop for monsters, putting together half of a yellowfin tuna, half of a burnt monkey's carcass, stork legs for the arms, elephant trunk and bones to tie it all together. For this, he paid, in the year 1911, $283.11. Adjusted to today's value, shade under $10,000. I'd say it paid off pretty well for Norman, still operating to some capacity on this lake here today, and due to Norman having that great relation with the Stony, was able to restore the lake's name back to its original, Minnewanka. And that monster still lives in town today. Probably can't see him as the trading post will be closed after this cruise, but if you're in town tomorrow, you want to go take a look at that hideous beast, walk down Banff Avenue, take a right once you've crossed the bridge, Banff Trading Post, little yellow building right there, gift shop that has that monster in the middle of the shop in a big glass case. You don't even need to pay that 5 cents to see him anymore. But what we're doing, finding a good place to shut the boat off just for about 10 minutes as we enjoy our time here in the Canadian backcountry. Might surprise you folks to know, closest town to us now, no longer Banff, but we are actually now closer to the town of Canmore with how far we've traveled into the lake. Anybody staying in Canmore for the duration of their visit? Oh, perfect. We'll give you a drop off over there and you can hike back. Perfect. But actually closer to Canmore now than Banff. We are truly in the Canadian backcountry. Usually on a beer cruise, I don't try to do this, but why don't we try it? You're a good group. Are we up for maybe 10 seconds of silence, just listening to the sounds of the backcountry? A lot of us, even at midnight, even in our homes, even if we try to do that 10 seconds of silence, there's always a refrigerator or something humming in the background. You never get that true moment of quiet. Something we want to try and give to you here today. So, we like to call it just a Minnewanka moment. 10 seconds of quiet. Highly encourage you, if you haven't already, open up a window, and we'll just listen for the sounds of the backcountry.
Yeah, that one sticks quite a bit. Just have to push that tab down, and then maybe push it all the way closed. Push that tab down, and then there we go. Perfect. With that. Perfect.
Alrighty, so we'll just go for 10 seconds of silence, taking in the sounds of the backcountry. In 3, 2, 1. Was I meant to be counting? A little bit longer than 10 seconds. Pretty nice though, isn't it? Not a whole lot going on over here. You can hear the pattering of the raindrops on the ceiling. You can hear the rain hitting the water outside the window, the wind passing through the cabin, all beautiful sounds of the backcountry. Everyone's been in Banff for a little while. Everyone knows Cascade Mountain, that big triangular mountain you look at straight down Banff Avenue. I've hiked up to the top before. From the top of that mountain, 10 seconds of silence I've decided to conduct from over 9,000 feet above sea level. You know what we could hear on top of Cascade Mountain? That damn train going through downtown every hour. Could even hear the sirens of an ambulance downtown Banff from on top of Cascade Mountain. So very nice that we find ourselves this far removed from that noise. Enjoy your time in the backcountry. I'll come around passing out a beer bun, a pretzel bun from a local bakery called Uprising, location in Banff and Canmore. I highly suggest you check them out. I'll pass those beer buns around and throw the music back on. Enjoy your time in the backcountry. We'll get going in about 5 to 10 minutes or so. That's when we'll get into that third beer.
Another rainbow.
That's our third rainbow of the day.
Gosh darn, rainbows won't leave us alone.
Take it away from them. I've been trying.
And there's it connects the other side over there too.
Oh my gosh. Wow. Wow.
See if I can get them full photo.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Here, a bun for you. Would you like one each?
Yes, please.
Here, a bun.
Oh.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
I should keep them warm. Well done.
Put it down by the engine.
Yeah.
Nobody likes cold runs.
Yeah. But Bankhead ultimately met its demise in 1922, going from Bankhead to bankrupt. Workers kept going on strike. The town, bleeding profits, decided it was better just to shut the whole thing down, cut off their ties, and make the town abandoned. By 1928, nobody was left in Bankhead. The 1930s roll around, the National Parks Act is put into place, which should have stopped any other dams from being built on Lake Minnewanka. How in the world then do we get the third, final, and current rock wall dam to be built? Well, what was a pretty big world event in 1941? World War II. And with the Second World War, Canada put into place the War Measures Act. The War Measures Act essentially granted companies the green light to do whatever they wanted, wherever they wanted, so long as they could prove that what they were doing was helping Canadian war efforts. So jumping on this opportunity was Calgary Power. Years prior, they had tried to dam this lake again, but due to the National Parks Act, they were denied. Now that they had the War Measures Act, there was no way the government could stop them. They said the dam they were going to build here was going to power an ammunitions factory in Calgary. Now, whether they didn't intend to build that ammunitions factory, or it just took too long for the dam to become operational, the dam actually wasn't operational until 1946. Any history buffs on board know when World War II supposedly ended? 1945. So, maybe Calgary Power lied to the government. That's very possible. Although I find it highly unlikely that a large corporation would lie to a government entity. That would never happen. Or it's just because the construction took too long on the dam, it wasn't actually operational until after the World War. But that ammunitions factory that they said they were going to build, no record of it. There are some munition factories in Calgary, but not the ones that Calgary Power said they were going to build. But that just about finishes the history of that dam. In response to that dam being built, the residents of Minnewanka Landing were told that they would have to evacuate, abandon their homes because they were going to get flooded out. Little did they know, Calgary Power actually really wanted to use those homes to house the workers of the dam. So the Minnewanka Landing residents heard this news and they thought, well, I'll be damned. If I can't have my home, nobody can. And they burnt their entire town down to the ground, leaving nothing but building foundations, sidewalks, and some other oddities for scuba divers to look at to this very day. Now, they do prefer to do it in the winter time, and that is what they are diving down to see, an old town, as well as the remains of that 1912 dam, still pretty well fully intact.
Where is it in the lake?
Yeah, I can point it out when we get a little bit closer to the docking area. Also, if you want to pass around this card, on the back here, this little white star, that is where the town once was. But I'll hop off the mic, play some music. We'll introduce that next beer in about 10 minutes or so. Enjoy the beer, enjoy the ride, and if you have any questions, feel free to flag me down.